everyone knows about Adyashanti, I presume. He's just a Western teacher who has been talking about awakening for several years. He had an awakening experience when he was 25, and then had certain experiences afterward that helped break down the grid that I was showing, that patterning. And so he's, by now, a very reputable teacher. He talks really well about this kind of thing. So I wrote out what he said, so I will read some parts, and some parts I will just narrate, because it's quite a few pages. But Adyashanti was 25 when he had a awakening experience, a really deep awakening experience. And there was a 6 to 7 year process afterwards where life itself was his teacher, which he recognized as the most powerful force of awakening in his life. So at his awakening when he was 25, what he recognized and realized, which is what took me 4 years, or what took 4 years to finally become understood, was that he was unborn, the unborn, eternal, undying, nobody, nothingness, which is of course the see-through space, right, that I was describing, that you cannot ever get to from this crawling place. And to identify yourself or know yourself to be this eternal space of nothingness, which I use as a visual, the see-through clear paper, air, air-like substance, cannot be understood. You cannot know what that's like. You only get there when it's experienced, but then there isn't a you. There's just that, and there's, I was describing that earlier. At see-through, there's nothing. There's no container. So that's what awakening or enlightenment is about. You realize that what you thought you are, the flimsy veil covering up the unconscious file system of programming, right? There's no substance to it. It's just universal, automatic, puppet-like programs running. The veil is the eye covering things up, claiming things as the eye, and what is really there underneath, and making all of this up, and everything else material, is just nothingness. Just nothing there. Yeah, that's what's realized. But then, how do you live this? I mean, how does this actually live then in daily life, right? It's one thing to know that that's what you are, but then what do you do? And then this breaking down happens, right? That experience may break a lot of patterns, just because that's what happens for some people. For some people it doesn't break hardly any, and for some people it breaks almost everything. Yeah. Adyashanti, he was a professional competitive cyclist. From when he was 13 years old, he was competing in bicycle racing, and from late teens to early 20s, he competed at very high levels. And so being a competitor, an athlete, a cyclist, was a big part of who he knew himself to be. And so we all have our own ways of who we know ourselves to be. It's a big part, whatever it is, yeah? And we wrap our identity around, this is our I. And so for him, that's what he was. That's what he saw himself as. And it's funny, when I read this, it's like, sounds like my story, except he had the awakening experience first, and then the breaking down happened. And for me, the breaking down happened, and then the awakening kind of appeared. So when awakening happened at age 25, it started a new process, something he did not expect, where he realized that the awakening was not complete. and that there were parts in the egoic personality structure that were not in alignment with what he knew. So he knew he was undying, eternal, nothingness space, right? But the egoic structure said otherwise. Said he's an athlete. He is a strong, physical, healthy, vibrant, whatever. That's what the egoic structure said. And so, of course, they were at odds. And in our life, many things like that are at odds with what is truly real. So he tried to address these things with spiritual practices, with meditating and inquiry through writing. But life itself was actually needed to break these structures down. And I think that's really the essence of what I want to share. Don't look for anything else. It's in your face every day. Just look right there. It's happening all the time. Take it by the hand and let it show you what it wants to get down to the bottom. So after a year of his awakening, he got a serious illness that really flattened him. Ultimately, they put him in bed for 6 months. And during those 6 months, it was extremely difficult, not only physically, but also what was still left of his egoic structure. So imagine, he's the strong, physical, immensely high energy athlete, and he's in bed, laying flat and can't do a thing, and has no energy and no strength to do anything. Because of how he knew himself, which had been built up over the past 15 to 17 years, about being an athlete, being physically fit, and in many ways more fit than 99% of the people he knew. And so that's what he identified himself. That's who he thought he was. He was in bed, and as soon as he would feel just a little bit better, he would be out bicycling again, immediately taking up his usual thing. And we do that too. As soon as something tries to drop, we hold on, and something drops again, we hold on, right? We try to hook ourselves in all the time. So he would get out of bed and go for bike rides, and of course the body would get overwhelmed and he would find himself ill again. Over some month of going back and forth between illness and trying to be fit again, he got himself more and more sick, until finally he went through this long illness and was in bed for about 6 months. At the end of 6 months, there was this great realization. It was not the same as an enlightenment or awakening experience, but it was very important nonetheless. He realized that he was no longer an athlete. Isn't that beautiful? Mm-hmm. No longer had the persona of an athlete. Somebody who was physically strong, having great endurance, being a great competitor. That persona, that egoic structure, had sort of been squeezed out of his system through this illness to a great degree. Remember how I was saying scrub for 6 months. Scrubbing was going on. Everything that I knew, everything that I thought, everything I stood for, everything was scrubbed out. He described it as squeezing out. It's the same thing. What's giving is all these lines. Life is just taking care of all these lines. He remembered specifically, as he was feeling better, that there was this incredible sense of relief and lightness, because he did not have to be this persona anymore. I tell you, there's such freedom. I wish I could give it to you. It's so delicious to not have this prison anymore through which you look, through which you feel, through which you understand and know and perceive everything. It's such a relief. Of course, the glimpse of awakening at 25 told him that he was not that person, right? But as is often the case, the egoic structure does not give up that easily, and he began to see the illness as a true gift, as a form of fierce grace that he was literally reduced to something as weak as a puppy. I mean, to really get that, right? to allow everything that you think yourself to be, or that's important or meaningful or essential, to let it all drop away, that there's nothing left, and to see that as a gift. Yeah. As he finally began to recover, there was a great amount of relief of literally being nobody. Remember I was saying, there's nobody here. I had the hardest time saying I'm Margot Ridler. For the longest time, when I would sign, I couldn't sign Margot. She doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. So anyway, what he realized at age 25, that was this awakening experience, that he was nothing and nobody and eternal, undying, all words, concepts, means nothing. But he actually could have a visceral sense of it, yeah, as these things more and more dissolved, of him being this physical body, strong athlete, competitor, dominant, right? As that all gave more and more, nothingness could actually move through the body. It was more than a visceral sense. Oh, there's really nobody here, right? He was saying that here, as he was after that illness, as a human being, the unborn in creation, in manifestation as a human being, and the feeling that he was nobody and nothing was wonderful. So he felt it as a person, yeah. He didn't identify as being this cyclist athlete anymore. And that's really what I've been trying to talk to you today, is the breaking down of our ideas of who we are and what life looks like, in all a very limited, programmed manner, to allowing really a lot of space flow through us and life and the body to make it less and less dense. So he says, I would love to be able to report and say that the dissolving and crushing away of the egoic sense of self was final, and that was all that was needed. But what began to happen as he began to feel better, because he always loved to exercise, was that he began to ride his bike again. And at first he felt great joy because of simply the activity of being out, riding around. And that's really what it is. You see, when I was traveling around, there was just life experiencing. I was with horses, I was with the Maya people, I was with the fishermen, I was with kids. There wasn't a sense of, I have to do this, I have to be there, I have to make this happen. It was just total freedom. All of the have-tos and shoulds and need-tos and structure of how I'm supposed to live, it was all gone. I was a free woman, free spirit, and not I, it. And so it just did whatever it did in the moment. It was always fully there. It was fully there in each experience. It could see the people, it could experience what was there. It was free. And that's what he was saying here. He rode his bike, but not as an athlete, work hard, whatever. He just loved the experience of riding, the air on his face, and the scenery. And life is a joy when you live from this. When the overlay is gone, it's a joy. And so anyway, so he found after some time that he was back to training again. And he said he was even conscious, and he would say to himself, I know what's happening. I know the only reason why I'm training so hard is that I'm putting my egoic structure self together. That's pretty cool that he got that. He was very conscious of what was happening, but somehow he was not conscious enough to let it go. I think because the egoic structure doesn't have a sense of what else is there. If that's not there, what is there? It can't conceive of anything. So life is a really wonderful, I don't know what to call it. I mean, life just does what it does in order to break down the things that we can't break down ourselves, because they're just too tight, too strong. And so he said he was not ready yet to deconstruct it totally, and so he did. And when he did resurrect it and went out training as if he were going to the Olympics or something. So he was training really hard. But you see, he says he couldn't do it, but my sense is, since there isn't an I, really, it's just however strong the pattern is, however strong the collective force is that's operating in us. If it has broken down enough over the years in our lives, then maybe it just breaks down one day and then that's it. Or it's just gonna keep running until it runs itself out. I'm not really sure if we can do so much to really break it down all the way. I think we can do things, and this is what Michael, I think, does in his praxis so very well, to bring us into consciousness, to not allow our train of thoughts to go round and round and round in circles, right, to continuously pull us down. But I'm not really sure how much of power there really is to break a whole file system down. I think that just somehow has to give on its own. So that's another prayer you could say, break it down. But that better know what you're asking for. So a year later, he found himself sick again, of course, back in bed with another illness, once again for 6 months, and a real crushing illness. And once again, the whole sense of being strong and physically dominant and all that was just squeezed out of his system. So the same process again. And after 6 months, once again, he was weak as a puppy. And once again, he felt as it was an amazing relief to not have to be who he thought he was, to not be somebody, and to not see himself in a particular light. You see, the ego, the structure cannot conceive of what that would be, or that would be a good thing. But once it's collapsed, it's absolutely clear. Yeah, it's the best thing that could ever happen. So, anyway, so he never resurrected that structure of being an athlete again, but he another thing that needed to break down with the help of a situation in life was the whole relationship structure. And he had, so he was saying, it would be nice to be able to say that after those 2 illnesses, the egoic structure had been dissolved, and that it wasn't trying to put itself back together again, and that he was now existing in the clear light of being at all times, in all situations. Unfortunately, there was more to come. In fact, more than I could have ever imagined. 4.5 years after his awakening experience, he met a woman. Women and men, we just will do that to each other sometimes. It was one of those relationships where it felt like Velcro. None of you know what that's like, right? Where everything inside of him that was undone, that was grasping or needy or addictive or unhealthy, fit with this person. And same with her. They met, and it was like Velcro, and the relationship was formed on some very unhealthy patterns. But basically what it was were some totally unconscious programs and patterns that hadn't been seen through, hadn't been dissolved, hadn't been let go. The long and short of it was that this relationship was unbelievably difficult. They pushed every single button that was there. They pushed him in a way he never believed he could be pushed. He suffered through these relationships in ways he could never possibly imagine suffering. And yet at some point, he realized it was a completely dysfunctional disaster. He had become a total emotional wreck. And he realized this was completely insane. What was he doing? How did he get himself there? And how is he going to get out of there? And really that's what all programs are. They're pretty insane. When you really start looking They're all insane.